Welcome to the Knowledge for Men show. Your life will never be the same.
Your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development.
I want to die empty of regret. I want to die empty of my best work. We don't understand who we are. Instead, we're living out somebody else's narrative.
What one man can do, another man can do. If it's been done, it can be done again.
Being yourself and being your truest, most authentic self in every moment. If it scares you or makes you a little afraid, do it. Follow your heart and your gut.
The first stage, I think, is finding you, like finding out who I am today.
Stuff will not work. You will have things that fail. Success is when you're a happy, fulfilled person. How do you define success?
It's your life, and you are the creator of the movie script that is your life story.
Hey guys, haven't shared it too many times, but one of the biggest epiphanies that I've ever had in my life was the first day that I started reading personal development, entrepreneurship, business books. And the day that I started reading those books, that was the day when my life changed. And ever since then, I've never stopped. So I've compiled the top 30 books and also the top 30 success quotes that every man must live by in a simple guide. You can download it for free at kfmfree.com. Again, that's kfmfree.com to really start growing in every aspect of your life. All right, guys, welcome to the show. I'm here with Dean Niewolny. He spent 23 years in executive roles with three of Wall Street's largest financial firms. He finished his career in the financial sector as a market manager for Wells Fargo Advisors in Chicago, where he saw oversaw $100 million in assets. Dean, happy to have you here on the show.
Andrew, thank you. Pleasure to be on.
All right. And Dean, we start off every show with some sort of saying or a success quote that the guest has lived by. So share with us what you got and what that means to you.
Sure. About 10 years ago, I came across a scripture verse that has stuck with me for years, and that's Ephesians 2:10, that says, "We are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works that he has prepared beforehand." And that sticks with me because it basically has resonated from the standpoint that God has prepared me to do certain things with the skills and abilities that he has given me. So I try to live by that and to follow that.
Yeah, I like that. And when did you hear this, and have you been living that?
Yeah, so I heard it when I was introduced to the Halftime Institute back in 2006. And during that season of my life, as I was still in the marketplace working as a market manager at the time for Wachovia Securities, I read the Halftime book and then came to the Halftime Institute launch program in Dallas, Texas. And that verse was quoted when I arrived, and it has resonated with me ever since. I quote that verse daily because I'm always trying to stay in tune with what my gifts and abilities and talents are, and I try to use those every day. So I've tried to live by that every day. I can't say I've done a great job, but I've tried.
You lean towards it. Let's put it that way.
That's right.
So, but let's take a few steps back here. So before the Halftime Institute, you had a long and great career working in the financial industry, working with three of Wall Street's largest financial firms. What was that like for you? Why did you go in that direction? You were really successful in that. Why did you... It looks like you walked away from it, or I'm curious to know what happened there and what led you to find out more about the Halftime Institute.
Sure. I grew up in a small town in Wausau, Wisconsin, and we didn't have a lot of money as a child, but I had everything I needed. Mm-hmm. As time went on, one of the things that was said to me is, "Hey, Dean, you live on the other side of the tracks." And the side of the tracks that I lived on was not the good side of the tracks, if you know what I mean.
Right.
And that always resonated with me as a young child. It was like, I am going to get to the other side of the tracks, and I'm going to do everything I possibly can to get there. And one of the ways to do that was to make as much money as possible. I remember my family always saying, and my parents saying, you know, those folks have a lot of money. Those folks have a lot of money. So that resonated with me as a young child. So when I got out of college, one of the things that I wanted to do is make as much money as possible so I could be one of those folks on the other side of the tracks. So one of the ways that I realized I could make money was to be in the financial services world because, of course, folks in that world are paid quite well. And I started out as a financial advisor with Merrill Lynch way back in 1987. And I had this goal in mind, and my goals were always around money, unfortunately, but they were always around money. I had certain net worth goals that I wanted to attain. And when I started to attain those goals, I started to realize at a young age that there was even emptiness around attaining these goals. I thought by making lots of money, that's what would make me, quote unquote, important. That would give me satisfaction. That would fill this void that I had. So I kept striving and striving and striving to make more money and go up the corporate ladder and get promoted and get the next job and get the next pat on the back. And I did pretty well at that. My whole goal in the 90s, late 80s and 90s was to accumulate as many toys and as much net worth as I possibly could. And I was pretty successful at that.
What did that look like? Toys? What did your lifestyle look like throughout the 90s? And when did you start to realize that these toys or these promotions that I was getting weren't fulfilling?
Yeah, in the early 90s, I had the Porsche, I had the 911, I had the 944, I had the speedboat, I had the home, I had the condo in downtown Chicago. And that was nice. I enjoyed those things. But at that time, in the early 90s, I went through a difficult divorce. And really, I wasn't a good guy at that time. I mean, I look back and I regret a lot of the decisions I made back then. And in 1995, I was promoted to a position in downtown Chicago. And I moved there and was invited by a friend of mine to attend a church called Willow Creek Community Church in Chicago. And at that point, my life completely changed. I met some folks that have now become my best friends. I developed a very strong faith at that point. But at the same time, there was this gentleman interviewed at Willow Creek Community Church by the name of Bob Buford, who wrote a book called Halftime. And I thought to myself, well, that's fantastic for him and all his buddies, this whole idea of going from success to significance. But I'm not about that. I'm about accumulating things and getting to the next rung on the ladder. And in 1999, I just remember thinking back to Bob and the interview that he did there. And for some reason, I had an attraction to read the Halftime book for the second time. But still at that point, I still didn't want to make any sort of changes in my life, even though I knew there was this emptiness, that there was more to life than just accumulating assets and toys. So I just continued along the same path. By that point, I was remarried. I owned 4 homes, worked on the 40th floor of the Mercantile Exchange building, was making a 7-figure income. And I thought, this is what life's really all about. But there was this incredible emptiness to it, Andrew, that it's hard for me to explain. But that's really when I started to think there has to be more to life than this.
Do you feel like the divorce was a part of your drive for, you were more focused on work, is what I'm saying? Like you were more focused on that next thing. And was there any relationship there?
Not really. The divorce surely had a major impact on me. It wounded me and it wounded her, and that's very unfortunate. But it also allowed me to push the reset button and take a step back and really look at my life and where I was at. Because at that stage in my life, it was all about going out and having fun and partying and enjoying myself as much as I possibly could and not doing really the right things. So it had a big impact on me, but I wouldn't say the divorce was the main factor in me getting to this point of saying there's this emptiness in my life.
Yeah. And when would you feel the emptiness? Is it like at night, or is it when you got a check and you're like, I still feel the same? Like when would it erupt, that emptiness feeling?
Great question. It happened for me throughout the early 2000s as I was getting promoted and I started to make more money. This euphoria feeling that I thought I would have, and I just wasn't having. I was excited to get paid. I loved the quarterly bonus checks, but there was just this emptiness to it. And as a young kid, my goal was always to get to a certain level of net worth. And when I achieved it, it was like, wow, that's it. I achieved it, but there was nothing to it really. There wasn't a feeling of euphoria or excitement. And I just realized at that point, it was really around 2006 when I was sitting in my 40th floor office building overlooking Chicago. Should have been very happy. I had a beautiful wife, 2 great children, overseeing 13 offices, $100 million business. I literally looked out the window and screamed, there has to be more to life than this. There just has to be more to it. And it was a turning point for me. I made a commitment in 2006 that I was going to figure out what I was going to do with the rest of my life in order to have impact, in order to live a life of significance, in order to leave a legacy and make a difference. So it was really 2006 was the turning point for me. And I think to your point, when a promotion was presented to me or there was a potential promotion, I wouldn't get excited about it. I wouldn't go out and strive to get that promotion. Quite candidly, I helped others get the promotion ahead of me. And that's when I realized, you know what? I've really hit this season of halftime.
Yeah. Or did others feel this way around you? Like in your office or other peers that have been in the career as long as you? Or did you feel like you were alone on this type of emptiness or this type of, it's like you were searching, like there's got to be more, like, what am I here for? Like you want to add more value in a different way.
Yeah. People thought I was nuts.
Oh, okay.
They thought, what do you mean?
Yeah, okay.
You're struggling and you have a beautiful wife, 2 kids. At this point, I was making a 7-figure income. And they're like, Dean, you have everything. You have this job. You have a beautiful wife, kids, material possessions. But so others thought I was losing my mind. I remember when I ultimately made the decision to walk away from all that, I've heard through the grapevine, people said, boy, he lost his mind. He had everything here. But the reality was that I had everything that looked attractive to most in society, but there was an emptiness to that for me.
Yeah. I find that interesting that other people, they're not seeing it. They're not connecting those dots there. And so you're talking about these seasons of life. So can you talk, if we look back at I call them more like the warrior years, but what would that season be called where you're, getting out of college and you're getting your job, your first job, you're starting to climb up that ladder, and then walk us through that season, what that's like, and then the transition into the next season.
Well, the season when I came out of college, I went to work for a company called Arthur Andersen at that time. But I realized at that point that Arthur Andersen wasn't going to allow me to achieve the end result of accumulating the wealth I wanted to accumulate. So I made a transition to go into the financial services industry. And that was in, like I said, 1987, starting with Merrill Lynch. So those were very formative years for me. I spent a lot of time in those early years identifying mentors that I could look up to and learn from so I could find a fast track to becoming successful. I really did make it a point during that season of life to attach myself to those that I thought could help me get to the next level as far as success was concerned.
Right.
So I don't know what to really name that season, but it was a big season of growth for me.
Yeah. And then this season that you're in now with, like, you're talking about reaching from success to significance. Can you go more into what that is and what does that look like?
Yeah. So I lived this life of success up to 2010. And at that point, I really in my opinion, made this transition from success to significance. And the significance piece for me is really going out and doing something that matters, something that really makes a difference, something that's going to leave a lasting impression on society. And for me, in my journey, it really has a faith component to it. How can I go out and serve others in a way that maybe makes their world a little better? And that led me from the financial services world to reading the book, as I said earlier, the Halftime book, attending the Halftime program in Dallas, Texas, and through a variety of different conversations, ultimately being invited to become the CEO of the Halftime Institute in early 2010. So what I'm doing now, living this life of significance, and what many others are doing, is they're focusing on things where they can go and have a major impact. And for many, it can mean serving in the inner city or serving the homeless or the sex trafficking trade or whatever it is that resonates with them, that they have passion around. They go and focus in that area and they spend their time and energy making a difference there. I think one of the misunderstandings or myths, if you will, of Halftime is that you have to leave the marketplace and go into the nonprofit world in order to live a life of significance. And that's absolutely not the case.
Right.
Many can stay right where they're at and build margin around their time, talent, and treasure and make a major difference right where they're at. You can look around in the marketplace, wherever you're at, and there's probably many people right around you that need help in some way, shape, or form, and you can have an impact to them. So this living a life of significance, for me anyway, is really living a life where I'm leaving this world hopefully a little better place than when I started. And living this life of significance for me also means leaving a legacy for my wife and for my children and for others that they can follow.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And what does it feel like now when you get off work and you come home and have dinner and go to bed versus if we were to reverse back to, let's say, 1999 or something?
Well, it's very different for me. There's no doubt about that. In 1999, I would lay in bed and think of all the great things I did for myself that day and all the great things that I did maybe for my wife and for my children and for our family and how I could help make our existence better and maybe make our existence more comfortable. Now I go to bed with this incredible satisfaction that I, along with my wife and children, are making an impact on other people's lives so they have a better life, maybe, that they have a better existence, a better experience. And so it's night and day, 2016 versus 1999, because everything now is more outward focused. And in 1999, everything was inward focused. So that's a big, big change for me and for our family.
Yeah. I'm wondering now, is it necessary to think that way in your younger years, kind of the inward focus, and then gradually, as you start reaching that level of significance, start to then turn around and start thinking more outward and impacting others? Is that the model that works? Or can they start thinking outward right now, even at a younger age?
I think you can do both for sure. And what we're seeing is that folks who are younger, the millennials, they no longer want to go from success to significance. They want to go from success and significance right now. And they want to make a difference right now. So this idea of going or getting to midlife, if you will, to halftime, and then living a life of significance, that's no longer the case. Folks want to make a difference now much earlier than ever. In our programs, our focus used to be the 45 to 60-year-old man or woman. It's interesting now that we have folks as young as in their upper 20s and as old as in their young 80s going through our program. So to answer your question, I think now you can do both. And when you do both well, you have a much more satisfying, fulfilling lifestyle. But it's inevitable that when you come out of college and you're younger, that you want to build up some success. You have to. I mean, it's something that needs to be done. But at the same time, there is no rule saying that you can't do both well together. And I believe when you do both well together, you have a much more fulfilling lifestyle.
Yeah, I like that. And just, I wanted to address that for like, oh, well, do I just kind of ride this out until I reach that significance? Or, can I start now? And I think you addressed that very well. So I think the question then becomes, how do we find out what we want to do? Like, how do we figure out what is the thing that I want to share with others or impact other people with?
Yeah, and Andrew, if I can just go back real quick to what I just said, just to add one more thing or comment to that. And my wife would surely mention this if she was on, and that is many live a life of significance and then go from significance to significance. So, for instance, my wife raised 2 children and did it extremely well. I would say that's significant. So many listening to this show would probably react and say the same, that my spouse is raising our children, and that is a life of significance. So I just don't want people to walk away saying, well, I got to be successful at some point and then significant. It's important to understand that whatever you're doing now, mostly if you're helping raise a family and children, it's significant. But your question is, how do you find out really, or how do you go from success to significance, correct?
Right. And how do you find that thing? Like, how do you know which area I should focus on, or should I just be focusing on helping other people in whatever way I can?
Well, if you go back to the quote or the verse that I used earlier, I believe that everyone is given a certain set of skills, strengths, gifts, and passions. And it's okay to go out and serve in multiple areas of passion. But if they're not your specific areas of passion, you're going to find that you burn out real quick and you'll walk away from whatever that passion is because it's not a passion that resonates with you. So one of the things that we do here at the Halftime Institute is we really guide folks to, first of all, figure out, what am I really good at? What do I really enjoy doing? What are my strengths? What are my gifts? But then what am I really passionate about? I mean, what really fires me up? And what we say is what makes you sad, glad, or mad. And when someone asks a question like, well, I don't think I'm passionate about anything, Dean. I don't know where to go serve or who to serve. I'll oftentimes say, spend a week and read the newspaper. What gets you really fired up? What gets you mad, sad, or glad? We did this with one gentleman, and it resonates with me. He was reading the paper. He came back about a week later, and he said, that idea just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. He goes, I found myself reading the sports section every day. And I said, exactly. Your passion is sports. So he started an inner city ministry for children, and it's a sports ministry. Others have come through and said, you know what, I don't think I'm really passionate about anything, but I love golf, or I love fishing, or whatever it may be. That is what you're passionate about. That's something that you really enjoy. So many have taken what they're good at or what they enjoy doing and turning that into a passion where they can go serve and help whatever age group they're looking to help. So in one case, we had a gentleman who was a sports fisherman. He loved fishing. So what he does now is he takes children, disabled children, out on fishing expeditions because he loves fishing and he's passionate about disabled children. So the Halftime Institute provides exercises and a platform to help folks really get a better understanding of what is my passion? What could I be really good at?
Yeah. And is it something that they can just do at their existing workplace? Something that maybe it's they don't have to quit their job or anything, but they can actually find more meaning in the work that they're currently doing and how it's affecting other people?
Yeah. A great question. They absolutely, and I said this earlier, this idea of leaving the marketplace and going into the nonprofit world is not necessary. Mm-hmm. Through the halftime program and the coaching that we provide, one of the things that we do help folks do is, first of all, look where you're working and look if there's an opportunity there to go serve in your area of passion. Down here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, we have a car dealership, a gentleman who owns a number of car dealerships, and his passion ended up being helping folks within those dealerships serve in their areas of passion. So he kind of started his own little mini halftime program within his own car dealerships. He didn't leave. He stayed right there and he served the folks that work for him. So you're absolutely right that this idea of leaving where you work to go into the nonprofit is not necessary. There's a gentleman who worked at Lowe's for a number of years and was considering leaving Lowe's to go serve in another area until he came through our program and he realized that he was very, very passionate about homeless men and women and children, and found out that within Lowe's there was over 500 folks in his area that were homeless that needed help, and he ended up serving within the confines of Lowe's.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this kind of just sheds light on that. You don't have to leave, that actually you can help people right in front of you.
Absolutely.
The people that are already around you, you can start being significant to them right now. Like, there are things you can do within your own company. And I like that example, the guy in the dealership. It's like, that probably just increases engagement, probably reduces turnover, and has a more lively culture if people, I think too, just knowing that your superiors care about your well-being.
Yeah, and we all know this. There's different types of leaders. There are leaders who are beat down leaders who get results because they're difficult and they have a heavy hand. And the other leaders are the ones who show true care and love and trust and have your interest as a priority for them. And those are the folks that you really want to step up and work for and attain whatever goals they're shooting for. So in this car dealership example, oh my gosh, the rapport that has been built and the relationships that have been built and how they speak about this gentleman, they love him. He's a fantastic leader.
Yeah, I like that. And it's good to go into that and be able to share that more. I want to now go into the knowledge round. Just going to ask you a few rapid fire questions here. So Dean, are you ready for the knowledge round?
Yeah, I am. I hope.
If you want to grow to the highest levels that you've ever been at in your life, go to kfmfree.com and you can download the top 30 books and success quotes that every man must live by. Every guy should read. If you want to grow, if you want to achieve greatness in life, you're going to have to read and surround yourself with the greatest minds of the world. So I've done all of the hard work for you. I've read hundreds of books. I've listened to hundreds of audiobooks. I've gone through and found the best quotes that you'll need to succeed and thrive and grow and become the man that you want to be. So go to kfmfree.com and I'll send it to you right now. kfmfree.com. Welcome to the Knowledge Round, where the guests will be asked rapid-fire questions to give the audience invaluable pieces of wisdom to help transform their lives. Starting in 3, 2, 1, showtime. What advice would you give to someone who's feeling really lost? Like, what's the first thing that they could do today?
Yeah, the first thing, if you're lost, in my opinion, is just to spend time alone and reflect. And if you're someone of faith, spend time in prayer.
Yeah. I feel like we live in such a world of go, 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 and there's so many distractions all around us that are good, sometimes really fun distractions that prevent us from spending time alone. I feel like many decades ago, that would be an easier thing. And I think today, more than ever, spending some time in solitude is critical for self-growth.
Yeah, it's the one thing, just real quick, that I learned years ago. I thought, wow, solitude would be so difficult because I'm a type A personality. But when I started to do it, wow, it made such a difference for me.
Wow. And Dean, what was holding you back from becoming the man you are now today?
Yeah, I think fear. I think that when opportunities were presented to me, I really didn't take advantage of those opportunities because I was fearful of what the results would be. I'd say number one is fear, and number two is control. I was trying to control the outcome of everything that I did. When I ultimately realized that I didn't and I don't have control, all of a sudden good things started to happen for me because I just released the control and enjoyed the journey.
Yeah.
It made a complete difference. It gave me a huge sense of peace. So at this point, when opportunities are presented to me, I usually look at them as something that I should absolutely explore instead of looking at them with fear.
Yeah. I like that. And what would you say makes a man? This is Knowledge for Men show. What do you think really makes a man, where you maybe interact with someone and go, that's a strong man. That's a grounded man.
Yeah, in my opinion, it's all integrity and character.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy to read a man when you sit with that person and listen to what they say in the first few minutes of the conversation. If someone that you sit down with stops and says, tell me a little bit about you and your family and your background, here's a man who has incredible character because that person truly cares about you and it's not all about them. So in my opinion, there is surely the faith component for me that is of utmost importance, but that faith component then leads into being a man of integrity. Let your yeses be yes and your nos be no. And then it's your character. You can ruin character in a hurry, but it takes a long time to build up solid character.
Yeah, really good. Thanks for sharing that. And Dean, what would you say on your journey have been 2 or 3 of your most influential books, and why?
Well, of course, you can tell the Bible has been critical for me. I was not a Christian in my early years, but in 1995, after becoming a Christian, the Bible has become incredibly important. I read that every day, or try to. The second book I would say is the Halftime book. Had a huge impact on me, and that's how I became the CEO of Halftime, by reading that book, and that started me down this halftime journey. But at the same time, another book written by Richard Stern called The Hole in the Gospel had a huge impact on me because he was really kind of struggling with the same things I was struggling with as he was in the marketplace looking for more, because he thought wealth would bring a lot of satisfaction, and he found it to be somewhat empty. So I'd say those 3 books.
Okay, great. I'll have to check out the last one there. Haven't heard that one. And so now this next one's more of a scenario here for you, Dean. Imagine you had 60 seconds with your 25-year-old self. And if you can picture where he's at, what he's doing personally, professionally, in his relationships, what advice would you give him? What would you tell him to do? What would you tell him not to do?
Well, that brings back some scary thoughts, but I appreciate you asking.
Yeah, it's usually what I hear. Not the first.
No, for me, it's very simple.
Okay.
Simple. And that is identify a mentor or 2 or 3 that you can look up to, that you can emulate, and that you want to strive to live like. And one of the things that we encourage halftimers to do, and that is to identify a personal board of directors. And that personal board of directors holds you accountable and also gives you guidance and gives you advice, be it advice that you want to hear or advice you don't want to hear, but it's advice that you need to hear. And as a 25-year-old, if I could do it again, I would say, okay, I'm going to go and identify my own personal board of directors, folks that I trust and believe and that I want to emulate, and folks that I look up to that I want to be like. And I'm going to try to meet with them at least once a month to be held accountable to make sure that I'm getting to the point that I need to in the long term.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Anything else?
No, I would say as a 25-year-old, if I knew that the Halftime Institute program was available, I would have looked to try to go through that program. to get some clarity on what my strengths and my gifts and my passions were. I have offered at my daughter's school, she's 18, to teach a class around gifting and strengths and passions, because to know those at a very young age is so important, because you find that people wander around, if you will, in the wilderness, really trying to find themselves. But if they knew those three things, strengths, gifts, and passions, it would shorten that journey up considerably.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. You think something like that would be a required class before you graduate college.
Yeah, you would.
I don't set the kid up for, it could be 5, 10, 20. It could be their entire career. They might not ever go in that direction.
That's right. That's right.
So I really like what you're doing here. So now, even if you have to summarize some of your main points, that's okay. But just to wrap up here, what would you say is your philosophy on life and success?
Yeah, I would say the philosophy really is that everyone wants to live a life of significance. It doesn't matter your faith background, your background in general. At the end of life, people want to look back and say, I did make a difference. I had an impact. I'm leaving a legacy. So my encouragement is really for anyone who's listening to really, really take the time to get a clear understanding of who you are when it comes to your gifts and your strengths and your passions. So at your 80th birthday party, when you're standing there and 200 of your friends get up to the microphone, they're talking about the incredible impact that you had on their life, not the impact that you had on your own life by making a lot of money. And I'm speaking to myself here, Andrew, that is something that I dream of when I'm laying there and I'm sitting there, hopefully when I'm 80 years old and 200 friends get up, that they're saying, Dean cared about me. He cared about me as a person, and he built into me, and it wasn't all about Dean.
Yeah. Just letting that sink in, because I think that message is one that we all need to hear. I think from time to time, I think we can easily lose track about me, when it could also, you can use your gifts, talents, and passions to impact other people's lives as well.
Yeah, it's really all about relationships. And we actually do an exercise called the 80th birthday party here. And it's an incredibly telling exercise when we do it, because a lot of times folks just look up with this blank stare like, boy, I don't know what people would say about me. And just quickly, I remember going to a funeral of a lady who was 85 years old, who I didn't know, but there was 1,000 people there. And I asked the person next to me, why are there so many people here? And she said it's because this lady was a teacher and she built into all these kids. And that's why they all wanted to come and pay their respects and celebrate her life, because she built into them. That's what really mattered. It was the relationship. She didn't have money or material things or anything like that, but she built into these other kids, and that's what was impactful.
Yeah. I've been hearing this message just a lot more and more, where someone in a significance type of space is saying, hey, man, at the end of the day, it's just all about the relationships you have with other people.
It really is. I had a good friend of mine recently have a health scare that caused him to have a heart attack. And after having a conversation with a friend of his, he said the most important thing is relationships. And I think that's very true. I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about relationships. When you're laying in your coffin, and I'm speaking to myself here, I can't take a boat or a Porsche or all my material possessions, but I can take relationships with me.
Yeah. All right. We'll conclude the knowledge round there. Very impactful. I'm taking in so much here, as I know the listeners are here on board with this. So now, how can the audience follow up with you moving forward?
So the Halftime Institute, you can go on to halftime.org. and find out all the information you need to regarding Halftime. And by all means, if anyone has a question of me or anything that I might have shared, you can email me directly at dean.niewolny@halftime.org, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
All right, Dean. And so now what's exciting you today? Well, like what's getting you out of bed in the morning, looking forward to this year?
Well, this year, the exciting thing for us is that there is a renewed energy, if you will, around coming through our programs and really figuring out what's next for the second half of life. But really, it's this international expansion that we are starting to have at the Halftime Institute. It's amazing to me that it doesn't matter if you're in the United States or if you're in Singapore, South Africa, Australia, Hong Kong. It doesn't matter. Everyone wants to live this life of significance. And I think the beauty, going back to the verse that I shared at the very beginning, is when you do really figure out, and I'm talking about where I'm at right now, when you really do figure out what God has called you to do for the rest of your life, it is so exciting to get up every morning and to engage in that. And so for me, that's what's getting me excited, Andrew, getting up every morning, helping others figure out, like, how can I live a life of significance and make a real big impact prior to passing away. So that's, for me, is what I eat, sleep, and drink every day and what keeps me excited.
Yeah. All right. I like that. And just the work that you're doing, the impact that you're making, it's, I mean, even just your story of being, spent much of your career in the financial industry and then transitioning into the work that you're doing now. I just think that story alone speaks volumes to the entire message. And I think it really hammers in the message much more just from hearing that. And you're living it too.
Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate that.
Thank you for listening to the Knowledge for Men podcast. Hundreds of interviews and millions of downloads later, we're continuing to build an international movement, and we're just getting started. So if you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and leave a helpful review in iTunes, because it really helps the podcast grow so we can impact even more men in the world who need this. Guys, this is all about living with purpose, where every day you only do things that matter to you. You wake up, live with purpose, and take massive action towards the life you want. And always remember, love the life you have while creating the life of your dreams. Go to kfmfree.com to get a surprise bonus I've made for my listeners. Again, that's kfmfree.com for something that's changed my life, and I'm offering it to you for free. Also, check out my Amazon best-selling books that I've written for you to help you crush life at kfmauthor.com. Again, that's kfmauthor.com to see all the books I've created to help you break through in life. This is your host, Andrew Farabee, founder of knowledgeformen.com, and I'll see you in the next episode.